It's important to remember that when cleaning your components for reinstallation on this head gasket project, that there is in fact in the very front main cap, which goes right here on the cam housing, there's a filter located right here, or a screen, that needs to be pulled out and cleaned. And just gently comes out. That's what the filter looks like. You just need to make sure that it's not caked in debris. This one appears to be fine. Make sure that is reinstalled all the way in that little orifice there. Okay, so we're about to install the head. What we're going to start out before we actually install the gasket is we are going to apply a small bead of silicone, or in this case FIPG, to the corners of where the head mates to the block. I have taken the time to pre-prepare everything, so keep in mind as part of this repair, it is necessary to check the deck surface on the head for warpage, and you're going to want to check for cracks. But the good news is we were able to identify before this project that the actual cause of the leak was not because of a crack. It was actually leaking through the head gasket. We were able to see that through the bore scope. Oh, wrong way. Oops. Almost put that thing in upside down. So once I get the head in place, I give it a small love tap to seat the corners. Now, these washers are directional. If you look at them really close, you'll see that the top side is wider than the bottom side. You always want to install these things with the side that's beveled down towards the head. So next we're going to install our head bolts. I have them in a little bit of oil here to allow the threads a light coat of oil. So the head torque process is a 3-stage process. Now my torque wrench does tech angle, so it'll calculate the degrees for me. But even though my torque wrench does that, I still like to mark the bolts because it allows me to make sure that my torque wrench is accurate, for one, And two, after I get all the bolts torqued, if the marks are all in the same position, I know that all the bolts were torqued. It's always good to come up with quality checks for yourself whenever you're doing this kind of tedious work. It really helps you to keep track of all the steps you have to do when building an engine or something of that nature. First torque spec is 36 foot-pounds. And we're going to follow a torque sequence as far as the pattern starting from the inside out. So once everything's torqued in that pattern, I go one by one and double check everything. Now the second step is each bolt needs to be turned 90 degrees. So that's why I'm going to take a paint pen. This is probably one of your best investments right here, is a paint pen. We're going to put a dot on the side of every single bolt. Torque wrench has to be calibrated when you go into degrees, so it has to be laid on the side and set still. So we're going to set it to 90 degrees and we're going to follow the same bolt pattern. See, and that's why I like to have the marks there, because that one's not exactly, didn't go exactly 90 degrees. So now we just want to make sure all our paint marks are in the 12 o'clock position, which they are. The final stage to torquing is we're going to torque it an additional 45 degrees. So all of your marks should be in about the 2 o'clock position. So we just double check, make sure all our marks are in the 2 o'clock position on our head bolts, and it appears to be that they are, so we're in good shape there. Now we start putting together the valve train. So I'm still trying to figure out how much battery lifetime I have with this camera. This is kind of a new thing that I'm learning, so I guess my battery died on me again while I was doing this job, so I missed quite a bit of what I was doing. At this point, where I'm at is I have resealed the cam and installed the cam housing. I missed the part where I was telling you that while installing the cam, you want to make sure that they are in the proper position, because if you don't, basically these cam lobes in the very front need to be kind of at an angle here. That indicates they're a top dead center compression stroke. So now that we have all the bolts started and ran down, we're going to torque them in a pattern, and the spec is going to be 22 foot-pounds on each 12 millimeter bolt and 12 foot-pounds on each 10. So once you torque all those bolts, give them all a once over. Some things to note since my battery died on you, guys, is when you install these camshafts, you need to pay close attention to these rocker arms right here and make sure that they're all the way over that lash, that bucket. So you need to do a good eye before you install the cams and then after you torque them down to make sure that they did not shift out of their place. And we are in good shape. Alright, now it's time to install the chain guides and start to time the engine. So our timing marks on this engine are going to be this right here, lined up in the center of these two colored links. The orange one's on top, yellow one is on bottom. And then you want to put this one to where this is in the center of that colored link. And if you look at the crankshaft sprocket, you can see a dot right there. That dot is going to be where that yellow colored link should be. So we're going to kind of massage the chain onto it. You're going to want to put this on. Because that's going to keep your cams from snapping back. I got it backwards. Goes like that. That orange mark is right there on the link it's supposed to be on, right in the center of the two. Now we're going to take and roll this cam over until we can get this to be in the proper position. We're going to have to roll this one over a hair. And we're going to double check our bottom mark. Now that our top marks are on point, we're going to need to slide this guide into place. And it goes on like this. Now yesterday I told you you were going to need a bi-hexagon socket and mechanics wire. This is why you're going to need mechanics wire. So on this engine, it's very common that when you take the timing cover off, the slack of the chain drops to the bottom where the crank is, because the timing chain tensioner is actually external, and now there's no tension being held on the chain. So by the time you get it all together, it's very easy for it to jump a tooth on time and you not even realize it. So the best solution for that is to wire your chain in place after you set your timing. I've seen this bite even experienced techs. So with that chain and with that wire in place, it's going to hold your chain in place, thus allowing you to keep your time proper during assembly. So after we wire it on, we're going to double check our marks. And we are in great shape. So now we're going to talk about the O-rings that need to be replaced while putting this engine together. Now that you've removed the timing cover, there are going to be 3 O-rings behind the timing cover that have to be replaced. And under the valve cover, in addition to the gasket and spark plug tube seals, there's 2 additional O-rings. And those O-rings are located right here. And the other one goes right here. Again, these are very important to replace during this repair. They are not reusable. I highly recommend this kit I'm using. It's made by Mall. This kit comes with every gasket that you actually need for this job. You know, my experience with the Felpro kit I went over in the last video I made, or the first video I made about this car, and it's just very discouraging when you get a kit and it doesn't come with everything you need. It really sets your repair back. So you have 2 gaskets, 2 little O-rings right here. On the cylinder head. Pop the old ones out and put the new ones in. It is good practice to use like a rubber grease. It's sort of tacky, so it kind of holds the O-rings in place, and because it's rubber grease, it doesn't cause the rubber to swell. Seal Glide's also a really good product for this. So now that we got the O-rings in place, we're going to talk about proper application of sealer. Right here is the timing cover, and I've already cleaned and got all the old stuff off, but before we apply new sealer, we're going to want to clean it with a solvent that actually does not leave a residue. That way the sealer can bond to the metal and create a tight seal. As if there is an oily residue left behind, your sealer will not stick properly. So after we do that, the best solvent to use is actually going to be denatured alcohol. But if you live in a state like mine, where the governor in all of his infinite wisdom has outlawed the sale of denatured alcohol for whatever frickin' reason, a good substitute is actually isopropyl alcohol. There's no laws against it. Matter of fact, they simply told every business that they need to actually have a bunch of isopropyl alcohol to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Well, I'm here preventing the spread of COVID-19, guys. So after we wipe it down, we're going to get a little bit out, and then we're going to go ahead and apply it. You don't need a whole hell of a lot. There are going to be certain areas on this timing cover, like right here, where you need a little extra, because that's where the stiffener, the crankcase stiffener, bolts to, and there's going to be a little gap there. And then right here is going to be the area where the cylinder head mates to the engine block. This is a common leak point, so we want to apply a tad bit extra right here. And we are going to dab the bead that we just applied. I'm not spreading the sealer, I'm just dabbing my finger into it, because what this is accomplishing is we are actually popping the bubbles that form in the tube during the manufacturing process of the sealer. Now those bubbles that sit in your bead may potentially be areas that could leak if not popped. This little spot right here gets a little FIPG on it as well. We're going to get a new glove. And we are going to install this timing cover now. Be careful not to touch any of the engine components with the wet sealer. I like to kind of give it a couple taps with a rubber mallet. Gets it started on there. And then I start a few 12s. to kind of squish the timing cover on. We just start installing our bolts for the timing cover from here, and we don't have to worry about oil leaking down and washing our sealer out. So after y'all have all your timing cover bolts tight, the next step is we're going to get our timing chain tensioner ready to install. The way we do that is you just get a flathead screwdriver here, and you hold this tab right here on the tensioner and depress it. A little bit of oil will come out, and you notice this little hook right here. You want to swing that around and hook that pin so it stays depressed. We're going to install a new timing chain tensioner gasket. Next, this wire that we use to tie the timing chain up is going to get cut. We're going to cut it here on the outside, and then we're going to pull it through right here. And there is a little guide on the very bottom of the timing cover that is going to prevent that chain on the bottom from jumping a tooth. When we install this tensioner, we want to make sure that that little clip is on top. This little wire loom guide goes on the bottom of the chain tensioner and is used to hold the harness in place. So we're going to go ahead and slide this in the hole. Sometimes it's easier to actually put the gasket over the studs first. Just be really careful not to bend this gasket. You should not have to force this tensioner in at all. Just FYI. If you're forcing it, then you're going to break your timing cover. You're going to damage it and cause leaks. After you get both the bolts started, go ahead and tighten it. And the next step, install the crank pulley. Now, when we do this, we slide the crank pulley on, we're going to disengage that timing chain tensioner from the latch. And the way we do that is by rolling the crank forward and then back, and you'll hear the clicks. And that'll be the plunger of that tensioner coming out. Now we are timed. The timing cover is installed. At this point, the rest of the process is just reversed from the video yesterday of taking everything out. Now we're going to install our intake back, we're going to install the EGR valve, and we're going to bolt the exhaust back together. All our hoses and so forth. Alright, if you guys like what you've seen today, please hit that like button. I will keep producing more content. Hopefully I can help somebody, do some of this stuff on their own. Till next time, I'll see you guys on the flip side.